Be aware. For my father, being in the flow meant in part being present, choosing to live his life consciously, purposefully, intentionally. Being present means more than occupying physical space. It's not just about whether you show up for class, but whether you are actively participating in said class. Are you listening? Are you asking questions, taking notes, engaging in the conversation? Or you're physically there, but on your phone? You see how applicable this is to today's society. Welcome back to Guardian of Chaos, the YouTube channel, here for Chaos Corner and Story Time. Be Water, my friend, written by Shannon Lee, about her late great father, the legendary Bruce Lee. Thanks for being here. This is part 2. Go back and check out part 1. Unbelievable. Be Water, my friend. The teachings of Bruce Lee. I hope your notebooks are out. I'm not going to go through the whole spiel here at the beginning of every episode. I'm just thankful and glad that you're here. Let's learn together. Thank you, Austin. Thank you, Jen. I hope you're both doing well. Are you here physically? Are you really there? Are you on your phone, half asleep, hoodie up, earbuds in? Being present in a key component of being like water? Why? That's what I ask you. Well, if the rainwater from my example above were not in active participation with its environment at every moment, then it would not have found its way into my office. Refer back to part 1 of this series on Storytime. You're going to find this unbelievable. It's a rare find. It's not just about martial arts. It's about life. And you're going to find that out as we go on here. That's the nature of water. We, however, get to choose whether to stop at the first obstacle or keep going. Unlike water, which always chooses to keep going if given the opportunity. And remember, even seemingly still waters are fed by deep, rumbling springs or consistent rains and snow melt, else they go fetid or untimely, ultimately evaporate. So if we want to fulfill our human potential, then we can let ourselves be complacent or stopped either. We can't let ourselves complacent. You get the drift of what I'm conveying. We have to find our way forward and keep being replenished again and again. And in order to find our way, we need to be paying attention. We need to be aware of what's happening all around us, using your own discernment, keeping your head on a swivel, surrounding yourself with like-minded people. In order to get respect, you have to start with respecting yourself, with oneself. Once you do that, you open other people's minds to respecting you. Stand by. Stand by. Let me have a little sip of Java. Thanks for being here. I really do appreciate it. Temporary distraction, much needed stress reliever, and you're actually going to learn a lot here. Fastly approaching Thanksgiving, fastly approaching the real meaning of life, Thanksgiving, the birth of Christ, so on and so forth. That's the message. Never giving up. Physicality, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically. I say it all the time. And I will continue to say it on this channel. My father has a quote that I love, which reads, to quote Bruce Lee, "To grow, to discover, We need involvement, which is something I experience every day. Sometimes good, sometimes frustrating. You might think, well, isn't everyone involved in their own lives? The truth of the matter is that while yes, we are involved in the sense that we are alive, as in breathing and doing things, many of us are not fully tapping into our consciousness, our self-awareness, and ultimately our potential. Oh, especially not to point anything out or, kayfabe, man. What I say, I don't want to offend anybody, but too bad. You need to hear the truth, especially the demographic under 35 years old. I'm just telling it like it is. That's why I find the study of Bruce Lee since the 70s as a young boy into now being an older gentleman so fascinating. The reality of it, the truth of it, the meaning of it. You can't go wrong. Our Lord and Savior, acknowledgement to him, because he's the one that makes all of this possible. All right, back to the story chaos here on Story Time. We are not proactively directing the course of our lives and paying attention to and working with our energy and the environments and relationships we find ourselves in. For many of us, life happens to us. We get trapped in unconscious patterns of living and forget that there are, in fact, many choices and many ways to be fully involved in the creation of our lives. To say it another way, we want to be fully alive versus merely subsisting. That's right, subsisting. And to do that, we have to be paying attention. Are your notebooks out? I'm going to take attendance. Are you paying attention? Bueller? Bueller? Anyone? That's not to say that we must always be on, nearly impossible. Always in control, nearly impossible. Always in the zone, so to speak. That could be exhausting. As I talked about in part 1, fight or flight, which most people go through for mere seconds, maybe a few moments. But when you're someone who went through it with life, as a living, I don't know if you can fully relate, and that's why I can relate to this, and not comparing myself to Bruce Lee, but just the mental capacity, the physical capacity, the willingness to learn, to be teachable, coachable, spread that word, give something back, because that's what I'm trying to do here. Again, that could be exhausting to be in the zone all the time, always on point. And such a life may not be possible for most of us 24/7, because as we know, life is not always within our control. That's for sure. Challenging things happen to us from out of the blue. We get fired. We get sick. We experience a sudden loss, or we just get tired and tune out sometimes. But this notion of cultivating a Bruce Lee water practice is one of heightening our awareness and acquiring and sharpening our tools so that we have the capacity to encounter life and whatever life throws at us, with as much skill, consciousness, and grace to deal with it as possible, while finding our ultimate way. Presence and awareness, and I say it all the time, you guys know that's my background. Presence and awareness play a big part in that. If my mind is polluted with all manner of negativity, or I'm snapping at people out of pure emotional reaction, then I'm not responding. I'm reacting. And when you react through your emotions, I used to say this to the kids I used to try to mentor, or the men in prison, or the kids at the high school. Don't give somebody else the power to control your emotions by reacting. And also, don't let anyone take your kindness for weakness. It's a fine line. I get it. Chaos. I understand. Okay. Where were we? If I'm not aware of how I'm feeling or what thoughts are going through my head, then how do I change bad habits or find more, how do you say it? Find more happiness is the word I'm looking for, and personal satisfaction. I need to be able to observe myself in order to see what I need to amend. That's why I always say, look in the mirror. Starts at home. Starts right here. You can't choose a response if you can't even see that there are choices to be made. Imagine for a moment what it would be like if you had the capacity and the skill to choose your response to every situation in every moment rather than being overtaken by impulsive reaction. You see the signs of the chains falling off, right? That's all relatable here. Use your mind. What if you didn't get carried away by your emotions or shut down and become paralyzed in the face of some challenge? Imagine what it would feel like to be fully present to every experience without losing yourself in it. Let me adjust the chains of life. It would feel powerful, right? And I understand that as great as that imaginary powerful life sounds, it may also feel unrealistic right now. That's okay. We're going to talk about this realistically and humanely as we go, because we're not meant to be perfect. That's for dang sure. That's right. We are not meant to be perfect. Stand by. I feel back in my natural habitat now. Don't go anywhere. This is part 2 in the series of story time. Be water, my friend. The teachings of Bruce Lee. To be like water is not to be aspiring to perfection. Perfection is a difficult master. To be like water is not to be controlling of everything. Controlling is a tight yoke. For now, let's consider perfection and control like this. There is perfection in a constant and imperfect unfolding of life. For every imperfection creates the opportunity for me to learn something that I can then grow from and put into practice. By practicing that which challenges me, practicing acceptance, practicing patience, practicing loving, practicing improvement, I will gain confidence under the skill, and practicing becomes second nature. Perfection, as we typically think about it, should be treated more as a way to focus our attention rather than a final accomplishment that we attain. To come to terms with this notion is to be able to view the imperfections of life as the perfect teaching tools and opportunities for our own growth and betterment rather than a measure of our success. And then there's control. In the astrology book, The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Joost Elfers, each day of the year has a name or a title associated with it. Am I born on the day of solid control? Good grief. I don't think most people I know would characterize me as a classic control freak. At least, I hope not. I've been compared to that, but I hope not. I feel I've had enough things happen to me that were beyond my control, that I am more apt to throw up my hands and surrender and make the most of a situation than to try to bend everything to my will. However, there's a balance to be struck here. And maybe it's in practicing how much control I can exercise through not controlling, where I can see the path opening up in the wake of a challenge. How much can I enact my will toward whatever goals that I have, while at the same time making space for what is actually happening in the midst of life's journey, you say? Recently, I had a big project that I really believed in, and it didn't go as planned. More than that, it seemed to be failing big time. So I tried to control it by moving heaven and earth to get the right people in place and get the necessary changes to happen to keep things on track. All while we were running out of money and options fast. I loved the project. I wanted to keep it going, but the cards just weren't turning up in my favor. So I decided in the 11th hour to stop resisting what was clearly happening. It was messy. I had investors with expectations. I had to lay people off and shut things down. But I decided to be present with what was happening and stop resisting it. I gave the future of the project to the universe. And I said, show me the way. And like water, I began to follow the course of this new unfolding, rather than to try to build 1,000 dams to enforce the direction of the stream. Yes, one phase of the project ended, but out of it came new ideas, better ideas, and new potential partners and possibilities. And the most important thing, I wasn't giving up or failing. I was finding a new way, and I reduced my stress and my anxiety while gaining more energy as well. And even though I still don't know if this project will be successful, just like here on Guardian of Chaos, the YouTube channel for Chaos Corner, we don't know if this project will be successful. And it is. And you see that I haven't given up or given in. I'm trying to be like water. That's why this book and story time is so relevant to me and the channel and my life. The difference is that I'm no longer trying to control the destiny of this whole complicated venture. Nor am I trying to perfect it. I'm participating and co-creating, but no longer forcing. How apropos. My father said, here is natural instinct, and here is control. You're to combine the two in harmony. And so I constantly try to ask myself how much control I can exercise within my perfectly imperfect self to be fully present and accountable in the face of challenging scenarios and people, such that I can get to realize some new way of being for myself and all I create. Sometimes I'm not very successful. And there's bountiful learning and the reflecting of what could have been done differently. That's for sure. But all the growth and learning, whether in moment or later, only gets to happen if I'm fully present and aware of my internal and external experiences. Excuse me, pardon me. I don't have any halls with me. We are entering the winter solstice. Minutes in here on part 2. Don't go anywhere on story time. The life and times of Bruce Lee. Be pliable. When a man is living, he's soft and pliable. When he's dead, he becomes rigid. Pliability is life. Rigidity is death. Whether we are speaking of the body, the mind, or the spirit, be pliable. One of the simplest and most easily grasped lessons of water is its pliability. Throw a rock in a stream. Try to skim it, like we did back in the 70s as kids. The stream adapts to make space for the rock. This is one of the lessons my father received as a teenager. That day he realized that water was a metaphor for gung fu. When he tried to grasp the water, it moved out of the way, especially out of the way of his fist. And it didn't suffer any harm. My father went on to speak often about the importance of gentleness and pliability when it comes to life and to martial arts. And you could apply this to any part of your life, not just martial arts, pro wrestling, work, sports, family. You guys are getting the example here on why this is being presented, correct? Are you with me? He also frequently recounted the lesson of the bamboo and the mighty oak tree in the storm as relayed to him by his Safu. The rigidity of the oak tree ultimately leads to its demise, just as rigid mind or attitude can keep you from learning and growing and thereby lead to stress and discontentment over time. If you cannot be pliable in your thinking or your response to a situation, then you have limited your options for success, for growth, and for joy. So how can we remain pliable, responsive, and centered, you ask? We already know that one main ingredient is being present and aware. You see the themes and the words being used here in the presentation. Present and aware of what's happening so that you can respond flexibly. I'm going to give you a martial arts analogy. Most literally, the combative arts require one to be fully present and fluid in order to not get caught flat-footed and knocked off balance or knocked out. You have to respond to the punch coming in order to avoid or block it. Yip Man encouraged young Bruce to train hard and then to forget about himself and instead follow his opponent's movements. To be like water is to adapt in response to your environment and your opponent. In other words, it is to be, anyone? It is to be, anyone? Pliable. Let's continue. But how does this concept apply more broadly to living life? Being like water means to be in the flow. First, be present and aware, then adaptable and mobile. In life, wouldn't being able to maintain awareness in order to then flow around your problems be helpful when navigating what life throws at you? Though my father never explicitly used a more modern term, flow state, he talked about flowing often. For him, being like water expanded far beyond a metaphor for gung fu to become a guiding philosophy for all of life. Think about it. One that he applied to learning new things, overcoming obstacles, and ultimately finding his true path. What is your true path? My father used the notion of living water as his approach. I say living water because we're not talking about stagnant pools, just as we're not talking about cultivating a stagnant life. My father used the concept of the flowing stream or the waves in the ocean often in his writings. As my father said, to quote Bruce Lee, like flowing water, life is perpetual movement. And I need to take that advice myself, that outlook, that opinion. Don't go hook, line, and sinker for what anyone says. And I said that earlier. Life is always in motion. it is never set. Even within our daily concretized routines, there are subtle differences at play. Our timing, our mood, our environment. Today you get out the door 5 minutes early. Tomorrow you have a headache. You just had a fight with a friend. Maybe it's raining, or maybe you just fell in love. One day is never truly like the next. So to approach each day like it's the same and not constantly changing and fluctuating, i.e. being in motion, would mean not being present or conscious of our full experience, and thereby not being able to be fluid in response to our subtly shifting lives. Think about that. I mean, it truly is an incredible read, and you can constantly learn no matter what age you are and where you are in life. Again, I'm going to repeat, that's why this presentation of story time is so valuable to me. It's a nice refresher course. Excuse me. Many factors affect us and alter our responses and reactions to even the most basic of our routines. So to create hard and fast rules or assumptions about how we live or about how life should be can get us into trouble fast. I've learned that the hard way, especially when life decides to throw us a curveball. A nice baseball metaphor. I had a baseball here about 10 minutes ago. It's out of reach. Nothing's out of reach. You get what I just did there? Do you see the play? In the words of Greek philosopher Heraclitus, no man ever steps in the same river twice. For it's not the same river, and he's not the same man. Each day we're different, and circumstances are different. Even when a situation you have encountered before appears to be the same, it's not. Nothing is constant. There are always subtleties at play. The complexity of life means that every single moment and situation and challenge is new. Maybe only slightly so, but still worthy of your presence and pliability nonetheless. When my father created his martial art of Jeet Kune Do, JKD, he took great care to establish deep philosophical principles to accompany it. These philosophies were meant to engage the mind, the spirit, as well as the body, and were a key component to guarding against rote drilling and perfunctory training. Look it up. JKD emphasizes formlessness and non-telegraphic movement. Movement that happens so instantaneously in perfect response to the actual situation that the opponent cannot see what's coming. The philosophy attached to JKD is meant to root the practitioner in a fluid and present state to keep him or her flexible and capable of initiating and responding to change. And one can only respond to change if one has enough mobility and approach to do so. Every action should have its why and wherefore. I wish to infuse the spirit of philosophy into martial arts, into life. Therefore, I insist on studying philosophy. Philosophy brings my Jeet Kune Do, potato, into a new realm in the sphere of martial arts. Though he started ideating the art in 1965, I hope your notebooks are still out, not formally naming it until 1967, he struggled throughout his life to leave behind his ideas in some lasting form, such as a book. He failed to publish his ideas precisely because he thought of his art as a living thing capable of change and evolution. He didn't want practitioners to believe that what was written down was the extent of it. On this count, I definitely can relate. He worried they would not bring their unique experience to the process of learning. He struggled so much with it that he took many technique photos and wrote pages upon pages of text about his thoughts on combat. He could never bring himself to publish them. Wanting to avoid the problem of concretization and creating devout followers who would refuse to question their own experience. That's part of the lesson here. That said, the book Tao of Jeet Kune Do, say that 3 times fast, was published posthumously in 1975 by my mother and Mito Urahara of Black Belt magazine. I used to read that as a kid in the 70s. I was enthralled. To attempt to preserve the teachings and thoughts of my father in the wake of his passing, great care was taken to create a book that was not a mechanical how-to manual, but rather something that would make the reader think and explore for themselves, proving once again just how ingrained it was for Bruce Lee's friends, and obviously his family, to remain true to his wish to remain open and flexible in all approaches. Other how-to books later followed, but the Tao of Jeet Kune Do remains the quintessential book on the subject, even in its most abstract. And it's exactly this level of abstraction in its presentation that makes it so beautiful to reflect on my father's water principles, to quote Shannon Lee. Because in seeking to guide the reader, you and I, it doesn't seek to bind the reader, you and I, but rather allow the reader to be active and a flexible participant in their own process of understanding. Makes sense, right? One of the first teachings of Jeet Kune Do is on the guard position. And then we'll end with part 2, and we'll come back with part 3, part 4 in this series that we're going to continue here on the channel. So stand by, don't go anywhere. First part was about 30 minutes. Second part here, 35 minutes. Fans, you're not going to want to miss this. You're just not going to want to miss these teachings. One of the first teachings of Jeet Kune Do is the guard position. The on guard position is that position most favorable to the mechanical execution of all the total techniques and skills. It allows complete relaxation, yet at the same time gives muscle the tension most favorable to quick reaction time. The on guard position must, above all, be a proper spiritual attitude, stance. Do you get it? From the Tao of Jeet Kune Do by Bruce Lee. Be water, my friend. I'll say that to say this, because I tell it like it is. Don't you dare miss it.